Well, hey guys, it's Darwin, and today I want to talk about some new backpacking gear gadgets that I've recently picked up for some smaller trips, but backpacking gear gadgets that I would still never bring on a long distance hike or a thru hike. Years ago, I made a couple of videos where I talked about certain gear items that I would never bring on something like a thru hike of the Appalachian Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, simply because they were overkill and I would totally leave them at home. Well, over the last couple years, I've taken a big step back from these long Odyssey hikes, 4 to 6 months out on these long distance trails, and really gotten back to the roots of backpacking, where I started doing smaller backpacking trips, doing more bike packing, and some other backcountry type of adventures like mountaineering. So there's some gear that I've wanted to check out and try out in the field, because in the past I was never interested in it because of the thing that I was doing. And even though some of this stuff has been really fun to use out on these smaller trips, my thru hiker brain can't help to take over, look at this stuff and be like, this is totally overkill. I would never use this on a thru hike. Now, some of these gear items are some very popular general backpacking gear items that I see a lot of people talk about here on YouTube or in people's gear list. Some of it's stuff that I've actually used in the past on my thru hike of the PCT and the CDT, but all of it is stuff that I think would be total overkill if you were gonna go do a long distance hike from 4 to 6 months. Aside from one caveat that I'll admit to at the end. Before I jump into this, just know and keep in mind that all of this is just my opinion and based off of my own personal experience of 8 years and 14,000 miles on all these long distance trails. All of this stuff is subjective, and you should always use what's gonna make you comfortable and gonna help you have fun in the backcountry. All right, so the first piece of gear that I've recently picked up is something that I didn't think that I would ever buy, and that is one of these backpacking chairs. So why in the hell would I buy one of these backpacking chairs? Well, first off, I've always been interested in why so many people love these and add these to their gear kits, so I wanted to try it out for that reason. The other one is I actually picked this up because of snow camping, backpacking in the winter and doing mountaineering trips. Because if I'm out and there's a ton of snow, I typically sit on the ground, and having something like a chair would get me off the ground more. So I got one of these Helionox Chair Zeros, just simply because I heard this is like the most popular chair that most people use. It's the one I see in a lot of people's gear list. And I can say, is it nice to have? Yeah. It's super cool, it's fun, it's nice to be able to sit out of the snow if I'm doing some winter camping, but I would still never bring this on a thru hike. I've actually seen some of these in some people's gear list for the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail, and I think this is total overkill. Now, it packs down pretty small. I mean, that's as small as it packs down because of the poles. I think it weighs just over a pound, but still, it's overkill. And if you're doing something like a long distance trail, I can tell you when you get to camp every single day, the last thing you're probably gonna do is set one of these up and spend time just relaxing and sitting around a campfire. Hell, most long distance trails I've done, I have not made a fire unless I really needed it. So for me, still, if I was gonna go out and rehike the Continental Divide Trail or the Pacific Crest Trail, there's no way I would take this. Instead, I would take the thing that I've been using for years, which is one of these 1/8" Gossamer Gear folded pads. It's stupid light. It packs down really small. I use it as a backscape. I've talked about this a ton in my videos. And it's just enough for me to have a nice seat on the ground or on a rock or on a log. Again, I want something on a thru hike that is simple to use, that doesn't take up a lot of space, that's not too heavy. And even though this is only a pound and it's not too big, this is obviously much lighter, and it just has so many more uses. So again, this totally overkill for a thru hike, and there's no way I would ever bring it. All right, the next piece of gear that I have is a piece of gear that I've actually used in the past. I used it a lot in 2017 out on section hikes of the Continental Divide Trail. I used one for about the first 100 miles of my PCT thru hike, and then I swore it off that I would never use one again. I ended up buying another one during my CDT thru hike in 2021, a solar umbrella. So When I was hiking through the Great Basin on the Continental Divide Trail, I was like, you know what? I think that I'm gonna give the solar umbrella one more try, and I'm just done with these things. I think that they are absolute overkill, and they're just not worth having. One of the things that a lot of people overlook about desert hiking is it exposed and sunny? Yes, but it's also typically super windy, and these things always get caught in the wind. Back in 2018, I broke one on the PCT. It actually snapped because of the wind. It turned inside out and snapped. On the CDT, again, the wind kept catching it. I even had a little thing where I added it to my shoulder strap and it still consistently caught. And what I found is over the years, when I carry one of these through a desert section of the trail, I end up just leaving it on the side of my pack more than I actually use it for shade. For me, the best thing out of all of these years is a good sun hoodie, maybe some sun gloves, sunscreen, or pants if you want to wear pants, but using a garment to protect yourself from the sun, not one of these damn things. Because even though they do provide shade, it's not that much shade, and for the inconvenience that comes with it, to me, I'm just done with these things. They're so silly. I've never found them to actually be that beneficial. I've even seen people use these on the Appalachian Trail for rain. Don't even get me started on that. I think that's ridiculous. If you've ever been on the Appalachian Trail, you'll know it is a green tunnel, so you constantly get it stuck on limbs and trees and bushes. Yeah, leave a sun umbrella at home. I can tell you in my experience, they're not as efficient as they seem, and get you some good sun protection, like a good sun hoodie, some sun gloves, a good hat, like a wide brim hat. That is the best way to protect yourself from the sun, not one of these. Next up is going to be one that might be a little bit of a trigger for some people in the backpacking community, and that is an alcohol stove. The reason I picked this up was actually because I had planned on doing a bunch of bike packing and bike touring in South America, and where it's a little bit harder to get some of these isobutane cans. You don't see these a lot in certain countries, so having something like an alcohol stove is nice because not only can you use denatured alcohol, which you could typically find just about anywhere, you can also use things like heat, which is something for your car, but it does burn in here because it is denatured alcohol. So you can burn other things in here, so that's where it's convenient. Now, when it comes to long distance trails here in the US, Pacific Crest Trail, the Appalachian Trail, the Continental Divide Trail, these are not needed. Why? Well, number one, you can find these along any part of any long distance trail here in the US. Even some of the smaller trails, the Pinhoti Trail that I did in 2018, I'm still able to find these. So this just kind of becomes cumbersome. They're not that efficient in the long run. It takes quite a bit of fuel. It takes a while for this to bloom, and it takes a long time to get a good boil with an alcohol stove. I just think in the grand scheme of things, these had their time and place. They were great. But now that, these are just about everywhere, you have outfitters that carry them, gas stations that carry them, you can get them at Walmart. Using this and just a, typical backpacking stove like this little BRS is all you really need. And it's gonna work anywhere that you need it to work here in the US, and honestly, on most trails. I've used these in other countries as well. Hiking across Scotland in 2019, I was able to find these just fine. So the alcohol stove is one that I would never bring on a long distance hike, and I would definitely leave at home. All right, the next piece of gear is going to be one that I see a lot of people add to their kit, and the only reason I picked these up is because doing some of these smaller backpacking trips, I just wanted to do something different, and that is some of these coffee making gadgets like the AeroPress, which is a pressed coffee. I have a buddy that has been using an AeroPress for backpacking for years. I recently did a video with him. He always carries one of these no matter what backpacking trip that he goes on, and it does make a damn good cup of coffee. However, I think this is total overkill on the trail. They're big, they're clunky, you gotta use filters with them, you gotta carry a big bag of coffee. If you're doing something like a small backpacking trip where you're only going out for a couple of days, this is great, because if you're just going out for one night and your whole goal is to stop and relax and take your time and make a good cup of coffee in the morning, this is pretty hard to beat. Or this, the little pour over, the GSI pour over. My big beef with this though is, you have to carry this, you have to carry an extra cup, and then you're also carrying your pot to be able to boil the water, to pour that over, and to make yourself a nice cup of coffee. Again, a good cup of coffee, I'm not gonna deny that, but in the grand scheme of things, when you're doing something like a long distance hike, you just don't really have time for that in the morning. You have miles to make every day. You have so many days to get to your next resupply. So when I wake up in the morning and I'm going to make coffee, I just want to get coffee in me fast. I want to break down my camp and I want to get to hiking. I know a lot of hikers that don't drink coffee at all. I know people that just eat instant coffee grounds or take caffeine pills. So for me, it's still always going to be instant coffee. It's going to be taking one pot to boil my water in, and then using something like Cafe Bustelo, which is a pretty cheap instant coffee that you can get about anywhere, or what I've really liked lately, some of this fancier stuff. This is First Ascent coffee, my kind of go-to lately. But to me, it is a bag of coffee plus this versus just this and my pot. To me, this is a lot more convenient. There is no way that I would actually take the time every single morning and make a cup of coffee with one of these items. So overkill. You don't need something like this on a thru hike because odds are you're not gonna wanna make it every single morning. All right, the last piece of gear that I have here is the caveat, is the piece of gear that I'm gonna admit that when I got it, I was like, okay, I would never use this on a thru hike, but after taking it out for countless nights on smaller backpacking trips, taking it out on a big section hike at the Pacific Crest Trail for 100 miles for multiple nights, I can tell you I would actually take this on a thru hike, and that is one of these little air pad pumps. So I have always used inflatable pads. I'm an inflatable pad guy, but I've never used a pump, and I've never used a pump sack. I've always blown up every single pad with my lungs. But I can tell you, the thing that I hate the most at the end of a day of doing 20 to 30 miles of thru hiking is blowing up my pad when I go to set up camp. Taking the effort to blow this up after I'm already exhausted, I hate it. So whenever I saw a bunch of people on YouTube start talking about this little bitty FlexTail pump, the FlexTail Zero, I was like, you know what? I'm finally gonna try one of these. I picked one up. I've been using this out on some smaller backpacking trips, and I can tell you that if I was gonna go thru hike the PCT or the Continental Divide Trail, I would absolutely take one of these. I know. Simply because it doesn't weigh much and it is pretty efficient. The fact that it's so small, it just kind of goes in my hand so I can throw up my electronics bag. It has this little adapter so it fits onto my sleeping pad, and I can just put this on my pad, I can start it, and then start doing other things instead of wasting my breath and blowing it up. When I got this, I thought I would test it out, use it on smaller backpacking trips, but still never use this on a thru hike. But again, now that I've used it so much, I would take this. I would actually take this on a thru hike. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. 100% not. But this is actually a pretty cool backpacking gear gadget that I would add to my kit. I would use this on a thru hike. So there you go. There are some items that, again, are great for smaller backpacking trips, are great for car camping if you're just going out for a night, but doing a long distance hike from 4 to 6 months, hell, even doing a couple 100-mile section hike, this stuff would be overkill, aside from this little pump. So what are some gear items that you think are total overkill that you would never carry on either a long distance hike or a smaller backpacking trip? What's some stuff that you've seen in other people's kits that there is no way that you would ever take into the backcountry? Leave me something down below and let me know your thoughts. Guys, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. I hope you're taking care of each other. I love you. And as always, thanks for watching.